Hey guys, we are live.
Here we are again.
Here we are again, another Saturday night with Celebrate Recovery.
Yes.
How's everybody doing tonight?
I'm good.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Feeling good?
Wait for some people to come on.
Yes.
Get going here. It is Saturday,
May 2nd. In case anyone didn't know.
To know. Yeah. Saturday, May 2nd.
Unless you, just in case you're confused about what day it is, because that is understandable right now.
Heck yeah. All right, so we're slowly getting some people come on. There's
Rodney's
Ron.
waving.
Ron Nagel. Hey, Ron.
Angie.
Mary.
Hey, Angie. How you doing, man? Girl. I shouldn't have said man. I just say that for everybody. Hey, Krista. All right. We got a few people on here.
How do we get rid of that?
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
So let's go ahead and get
Let's
going. Okay. Hey guys, my name's Sabrina. I'm a grateful believer. I struggle with codependency and food issues.
Hey, Sabrina.
Hey.
My name's Allen. I'm a grateful believer, and I struggle with codependency and anger.
Hey, Alan.
Hey.
So before we get started tonight, just wanted to kind of check in about the summit, the CR Summit, and answer any questions that you might have. We also have the national team and state reps and regional directors that are always on here with us, and they'll be answering questions as well.
Yep.
So, but one of the big questions that we get a lot is what?
Can we, with the CR Summit, virtual online summit, can we do it as a group at our church?
Right. So that's one of the biggest questions. And absolutely, we think this would be so awesome for groups to be able to get together to enjoy this together. So that would really depend on your local state, whatever it is that at the time that they're doing in terms of restrictions, and your local church. And so this isn't something that we'll dictate as Celebrate Recovery to say you can or you can't do that. We would love for groups to be able to do that. However, the thing to keep in mind is definitely that we don't have like group rates for a group at church to buy a license to view it or whatever. Everyone would need to buy their own ticket, and then have someone in your Celebrate Recovery group that would kind of be hosting that at your church. Verify that people have tickets when they come into view, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think our ministry leader at our church, as long as the restrictions are lifted and people can gather together, she's planning a big party. So.
Oh yeah, she's planning all kinds of stuff. The first night she found out, she texted me and she was like, "My wheels are spinning. I have plans and things I want to do," and so we're getting a lot of information about that. And we're hoping at some point we're kind of talking a little bit about how to get information possibly to you guys to know what local churches are doing that. A way to find out might be to contact your state rep, and you can do that by going to celebraterecovery.com, clicking on CR groups, and then click on find your state rep. And maybe if the MLs are letting people know, or the ministry leaders are letting people know that they're doing that, that would be a good way to get in contact with a local church to find out if they'll do a viewing as a group. Yeah.
And remember, it's $49 a person.
Yep.
And when you register 5 people, you get that 6th person for free. And we've talked about, they've talked about that, use that free ticket to give it to your pastor, maybe even some church staff members that don't really know a lot about Celebrate Recovery. And the more people that you can get involved with your church with it, I think it's going to just help your ministry. I was thinking about this earlier today, and we were talking about this online summit. When we first started our ministry, it was about 13 years ago, somewhere around there. Yeah.
It was 13 years ago.
13 years ago. There was only a West Coast Summit. And so there was only a couple people that went every year to the summit, and some of them, it was just like, okay, I got enough airplane miles or hotel points or whatever, and we go to the summit. And we've got a pretty large CR, about 150, 60 people a week, about 40, 50 leaders, somewhere in that area. And but when only like 2 or 3 or 4 of them are going to the summit coming back, and you're all fired up, like, yeah, we learned this and we did this and we need to do this. All the other leaders are just like, yeah, I don't know much about that. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. It's hard to inflict that change, right? And it's almost like trying to turn the Titanic with a popsicle stick. It's just not going to happen. But the East Coast Summit for us was a game changer.
Yeah.
We were able to send, we've been last several years, 30 people plus,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not usually the same people. Sometimes it's new people every year going. And so now when 30 people are coming back, they're firing everybody up, and it's a lot easier to
get that excitement,
yes. And get that going in our recovery ministries and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And then, encouraging other people that didn't get a chance to go to be like, man, you got to go next year. You got to go next year to the summit to do that. So this now,
yes.
with this, online, this is a game changer again, because now you can invite,
basically 6 people can go for the price of what you would normally pay for one ticket.
One ticket, yeah. So I expect we'll have easily 60.
Yeah.
Or more
absolutely.
From our Celebrate Recovery there.
So get everyone excited, get everybody there, with everyone needing to buy a ticket. And that's the case even if you're watching it at home with a couple of people. Whoever watches needs to have purchased a ticket. It's just like going to a summit. If you went there live, you pay for a seat. Everyone that goes pays for a seat, whether you're going with friends and family or people from your CR or whatever. Same thing here, and it's just such a deal that you can totally do it, totally worth it. So.
Yeah, and all those people can be on board and same catching that same vision, at the summit at the same time. It's really, really, really cool. So.
Yes. So I don't see any questions, so we're just going to keep on moving on. If you do have questions about the summit, just keep those coming. One of the things to be looking for, you come to these nightly, and when there's changes that happen, we're going to share those with you. Let you know what's happening, because we're kind of, figuring some things. We're still in the process of figuring some of those things out. What are the specifics? What are the details? And we want to share those details with you once we make decisions about things. So, and keep checking at crsummits.com, and that's plural, summits with an S. Make sure that you check that out often as well.
Yeah, just like last night, Johnny and Jenny had Hosanna on there, so we know that she's going to be there at the summit, which is awesome.
Yes.
And if you didn't catch it, he showed a picture using his phone of a T-shirt, so
which Jenny wasn't sure he had permission to do, but
he did it.
You were able to see that T-shirt.
So
if
you want to see the T-shirt, go back and look at last night's Johnny and Jenny, and you'll see that on there. And so that's pretty cool, though.
Yes.
But see, as more information comes out like that, we'll be able to release it like that too. So
yes. So tonight, Alan and I are going to talk about sustainable recovery. Mm-hmm. Our CR, like you said, as Alan said, we've been going for 13 years, and we've personally been going for 13 years because we started the night that it launched at our CR. So, and I had done years of my own recovery as well, with codependency, mostly by reading and self-educating, but also being a part of Al-Anon and different groups as well. And so we've been doing recovery for a long time, and very intensely since we started Celebrate Recovery 13 years ago. And so sustainability has become something that we've talked about several times, because recovery doesn't look the same 13 years later as it did 13 years ago when we started, right? And so how do we sustain that recovery has been one of the topics of our conversations. A few months ago, I was talking with Alan about a conversation that I had with my daughter about my food issues. Last week we talked about relapse, and I had talked a lot about my codependency, but someone had said, how do you deal with all of that with your food issues? And that it's not that it hasn't been a struggle, but I had overcome a good bit of that by the time we started recovery. And so I've been in more of a sustaining phase with my food issues longer than I have with my codependency issues. But basically over a 30-year span of time, I've had food issues since I was a very young child. That was my first drug of choice to deal with the alcoholism in my home. My dad was an alcoholic, my mom was codependent, and to kind of deal with the issues that I was dealing with in the home and just in my own life with my own decisions, food was the thing that I kind of gravitated to deal with those emotions, to numb them, to medicate them, to whatever. And in that period of time, I've done all the diets, all the quick fixes, all the fads that have come along. I've done it all, okay? And I've had lots of examples of victories and successes in that time. I've lost a lot of weight over my lifetime, and I've also seen that, the up and down of that coming back, and just continuing to deal with that. None of those diets or programs or fads or anything were sustainable over time. I would get to a point where I just couldn't sustain it anymore based on doing whatever it is that I was doing at the time, at that moment. So there was always this, kind of roller coaster that was going on with it. I have found some sustainable pieces throughout it, which was the reason that by the time we hit recovery at CR, I was doing more sustaining work with that. Like in one of those programs, I found out and figured out how to actually stop eating when I was full. That was something that I had never done my entire life. It was not a part of what I did growing up. I just always ate and ate until I was miserable, and that was the norm for me. And so in one of these programs, I learned about that. The other part of that program, I also didn't sustain, but that was something that stayed with me and has been with me, probably 15, 20 years. It's been a long time. Another thing is, gradually a sustainable thing that has happened in our household is that we have very few white products in our house, like white bread and white rice and pasta. We don't eat a lot of those things. And so that has been something that's been sustainable as well. And I get to a point where actually, if I am eating other things, I will get to a point where I actually crave that healthy food. Like if I decide to eat other things for a little bit. And I no longer have the compulsions associated with full food, the big compulsions. I used to eat, eat at night. I would binge eat. Allen worked nights. As soon as he left, I would just binge eat. And that's something that's not a part of it anymore. Or emotional eating. That's not something that I do anymore. It still was happening when I started recovery. But as I learned to deal with my emotions in different ways, look at them, examine them, apply recovery tools, talk to people, all these different things using the recovery tools, that has been something that doesn't really happen anymore either. But what I am now dealing with are the effects of a lifetime of abusing food. And so I became insulin resistant, and I've had some what would be considered minor health issues for some people, and just dealing with that. I had a hysterectomy a couple of years ago, and that kind of compounded some of that stuff. And so for me, food issues really and truly has been for a while about finding what's sustainable for me. So in fact, I can't get into conversations or be too long around conversations that are, that circle around fad diets or what this person is doing or what that person is doing. Mentally, I can't let myself go into those kind of things because it's actually a trigger for me, because it's so tied into body image issues, which were a huge part of it for so long. And it triggers me to want to try that next thing, like I always did, to be the fix, the quick fix, right? Not the sustainable fix, but like just wanting to get sucked into that. And so now I'm kind of in this tension between working on my health for health's sake, to feel better, to, to be able to do things with my grandkids and be around for a long time, that kind of stuff. And continuing what's sustainable so that I don't get sucked into body image issues, and because that's a temptation all the time. And so as I was telling Allen about this conversation that I had with my daughter, and I was talking about like wanting to find what is sustainable in this, he said, it's kind of like what we've talked about with our own recoveries, right? And I said, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah. She didn't like that the recovery process is just continual and
Yes.
figuring out how to sustain momentum, as we continue to progress through our recoveries.
That it was going to be kind of never ending,
Yeah.
like this food issue has been my whole life. And so like now I'm going to have to keep seeking out sustainability with my recovery.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I never thought about that.
And we know, like, during this process, especially early in the beginning, there's a lot of highs and lows. And, you can think about it like going to youth camp. You've been to youth camp when you were younger, and you go to if you did.
Mm-hmm.
You go to youth camp and you're on fire that whole week, like, oh, my life has changed and this is great. It's the greatest high, and it's all about God and Jesus, and I'm going to read my Bible every day, and I'm listening to only Christian music and all that stuff, and I'm going to change the world when I go back home. And then you get back home and real life sets in.
Yeah, and that fire is still there, but it starts to slowly, life comes in, and how do you sustain that high?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the goal then after that is like, I want that high back.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And so when we get into recovery, especially like for us, when we got in the beginning of our recovery, there's usually like tension or some reason why we go there for the first place, right? Maybe you're addicted to, there's an addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or relationships, or food, or codependent, whatever it is, you end up going to celebrate recovery. And so that tension and that addiction is what actually gets us in the door and going.
And keeps us motivated.
Keeps us motivated and going, because we want to, there's that pain there that's become too great and we're ready to change it.
Yeah, be rid of it. Yes.
And so we start that process and we have a lot of growth, but as time goes on too, you do have some relapses come in there as well too, especially if you're, dealing with issues like codependency and food issues.
Right, behavioral issues like we talked about last week. Yeah, so when you're talking about chemical, that's something that you stop altogether, but we talked last week about relapse and how that's not something that can fit with behavioral issues, because I can't stop eating. Food has to be a part of my life, or anger is going to be a part of everyone's life, or codependencies. I can't stop having relationships. So we talked about all of that last week. And so relapse with that is truly part of it.
Right. And as we started our process too, and we were getting healing for ourselves, and we started working our relationship, we had some good gains. We had some strong growth, some growth spurts.
Huge growth
spurts, but at the same time, there would be times where in the beginning, we'd have some rough conversations, but then we would have some good conversations. And I'd be like, we got to keep this going. Like, let's do this again tomorrow and talk and do it again do it again. And it was just too much to sustain that, to have that
level of it. There was a week in particular, I remember this happening, because we had so many rough conversations in that beginning. I talked about in here before that we committed to meeting and talking with each other for 3 hours every week. And those would be those were bad more than they were good. And so there was a week where we had a great conversation. We had, really good outcome and different things. And then Allen wanted to talk about it every day. He's like, let's keep talking. Let's keep talking. And finally at one point I was like, dude, I can't. Like, we're doing this for 3 hours every Friday. We're doing recovery on Thursday night.
We got to slow down.
Yes.
We got to slow down. The thing is that, we just can't keep that upward trajectory. I mean, that steady, fast upward trajectory of recovery. And there's going to be, bumps along the way, but it's hard to sustain that initial burst of growth and that initial freedom that we get. So as time has gone on, it seems like we've slowed down, and that growth is obviously slowed down, and
not bursts,
not
big
the bursts as it was in the beginning, right? And sometimes there's been a lot of times where we're like, man, something would happen and we feel like we're stuck. We're back right where we started from. But when we pull back and look at the overall, from where we were 13 years ago to where we are today, you can see the growth, and you see that there might have been a lot of ups and downs along the way, but the general path has still been going up, and that's good. And so, it's important that we still do our meetings, still do our step studies, all those things are important, even though that we're not seeing the big spurts of growth like we did in the beginning. We need to do this so we still don't fall back into our old ways. But it also helps us recognize faster when something does happen that, I need to make sure I focus on this again, and not fall all the way back. But
yeah, we had no self-awareness before.
No.
When we were in our, if we were triggered or we were active in our issue, whatever it is, anger, codependency, control, food, all of those things, we had no awareness. But with recovery, awareness has come. We are able to examine ourselves, look at ourselves and go, what's my part in this, as opposed to always blaming something outside of us.
Yeah.
And so, but we do still fall back into it.
Yeah. We just have to
creeps back in.
Yep. We have to understand that while recovery has a burst of great growth in the beginning, slow and steady. Slow and steady is what's sustainable over the long haul.
Right. Kind of that being the goal to kind of, you know, have those bursts all the time like we want from camp. You know, we want to keep that high is something that becomes unrealistic to think that we're going to keep going back to those big bursts. That it has to be more kind of slow and steady is what we were talking about today. Real quick, there was a question posted that I wanted to address before continuing on. Any tips on how a spouse can help support with food issues? Did you guys find any helpful strategies? So this has been for me.
In a nutshell,
go.
Leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Just whatever you want to do.
Yes.
I'll help you.
Yes. So it's been very, very, very. I can't even say how many varies. It's been difficult to talk about my food issues with Allen because of the body image issues and, you know, just what the culture teaches about beauty and the body and all of those kind of things. I you know, and I had issues related to that because of relationships in my past as well as my early relationship with him, that any kind of support or any kind of comment, let's say it that way, felt like him, well, and because he had control issues, felt like him judging me or trying to tell me what to do, trying to control me. And it's just a super touchy subject with us. And so his support has been in the form of, like he said, just leave it alone. Let me deal with my issue with this. If I need to talk about it, I will. And he doesn't try to control that, push that, try to give me fixes, those kind of things. That's a really super, super difficult and hard thing for me to accept from him. And so it has to come from other people, recovering people that understand the issue, because he didn't understand it as well. And so that's the kind of support I needed. The kind of support you need from your spouse might be different. And so what's important in that is to say to yourself and kind of examine, what do I need from my spouse, and communicate that. This is what I need. And I've said to him before, I need you to not try to give me tips or tell me how to do this. I've researched a lot about food so that I could learn on my own. And so he's been great in that and just supporting in that way. So great question.
Yep, good question. Basically,
it's you being in control of your own recovery.
That's it.
And figuring out what it is that you need. So going back to sustainable recovery, Allen said we have to come to an understanding that while recovery has bursts of great growth in the beginning, slow and steady is where sustainability lives. It's kind of where it happens. I would myself, as we had that big growth period that really took 5, 6, 7 years. It was because it was so bad and hard in the beginning. And then we got to a really, really good spot. And it was like we were, feeling good and like we were responding in healthy ways and all of this. And then we went through a few periods of like slipping back into old behaviors. And it's like, why is this still happening? We have recovery. Like this should not still be happening. I would think I would get frustrated because I had truly gotten to the point in my head where I thought Allen would never go back to being angry and controlling or struggling with that, is the way I should say it. And so any little struggle he's had with it, I would get frustrated, especially if it would come back. So because it was like, and the reason I didn't like it, truth, 100%, is because it triggered my codependency and I couldn't deal with my own codependency with it. So, because he's done a million times better, but at the same time, it's like, I want there to be none of that so that I don't have to deal with my own codependency because that frustrates me. And so I get frustrated that I go back as well to that. I get triggered by him and then I'm tempted to go back into that. And so what we both had to kind of come to the understanding that we're not going to stay on this perfect recovery trajectory. Like recovery will never be perfect. Life will never let it happen that way. And we had to accept that as reality, right? And just know that we still have to keep doing the work. Johnny talks about the same thing in his book, The Road to Freedom, which I just love. Recovery people, we start working and we start understanding these things, and it's great that that we can all kind of share this kind of stuff with each other. His life lesson number 3 in the book is small, steady improvement lasts longer than overnight change. which is basically the same thing. It takes time, and for it to be sustainable, it has to be slow and steady, small and steady kind of changes.
Yeah. One of the things that he also talks about in the book too is that during that same chapter it says many come to CR looking for an instant and complete change. He said people will ask, how long do you think that I'll need recovery? And we've heard that as well too. How
Yes.
long is this going to take, or how long do we need to do this? And you're going to need it forever. People in recovery that we're in it for. You're going to need it forever.
We all finally come to that conclusion. Yes. Eventually.
Absolutely. Everybody wants a quick fix. They just want it, get in, get this thing done, and get it over with, and we felt this as well at first. We just want to get fixed so that we can move our relationship and continue to move forward. Recovery is just a specific, focused process of sanctification. That's all it is. Being changed to be more like Christ, and then that never ends. Philippians 1:6 says, being confident of this, that he who began the good work in you will carry it out onto completion until the day Christ Jesus. And that's recovery.
Yes.
I mean, you're just going to keep doing it.
Yep.
Going forward. We have to choose to stay in this process of recovery as well too. And of course, recognize that after we have that season, that big burst of growth, that the small details still become important. Like I said earlier, mm-hmm. You're still doing step studies, you're going to your meetings, you're connecting with your accountability partners and your sponsors and so forth. I can tell that when this is not happening, for some reason, maybe work's crazy and I miss a meeting, I don't check in, with my accountability team,
not a meeting at work, a meeting with CR.
CR meeting, yes. And then, and then I miss a CR meeting and not check in with my accountability team. Maybe I didn't read my Devo that day. And then one day turns into 2 days, and then next thing you know, I'm on my way home and there's traffic, which has always been a trigger before. And instead of turning up the radio and just singing along, mm-hmm. I'm yelling at the person next to me for no apparent reason. And then that's that slight, mm-hmm. wait a minute, I've caught myself and, I need to go back.
Yeah. People come in, do their, a lot of the time, people don't realize this, that it is those small details like Alan was just talking about. People will often come in, do their year and be like, I did my step study, I'm good. I'm fixed, or I'm going to be fixed when I get to the end of my step study, right? And we might not see them for a while. They still believe this at some point, but eventually we see them struggling. We see them coming back eventually because, life happens and struggle happens and they realize that they need this. Yeah. Where I see that real quick, we're right at the end. And so just one of the things that I thought about when we were talking about this was I learned a year or two ago that I have a sensitivity to the proteins in milk, not lactose, but the proteins. And so I need to avoid milk. And it's something that avoiding actual milk was easy because it had upset my stomach for years. Obviously I had this and didn't know. And so I had gotten to the point where I didn't really drink milk, but I didn't avoid it in like cream sauces or, products and, butter, cheese, those kind of things I didn't avoid. And I had skin issues. My neck would break out. And I always thought it was because I was getting older and I had skin issues, whatever. But there were things that were telltale signs that I didn't know that this is what it was. And I thought it was allergies from outdoor stuff. Well, so I've avoided milk really well. And I got the good balanced butter that's made from oil. And, I'm eating cheese. I actually have a low tolerance to that, not a high, or low sensitivity, not a high. So I would eat that sometimes. Well, as I would compromise a little bit at a time, to where a week or two ago, I had a night where I didn't sleep all night long. And I've never felt like I could get a deep breath. It was really scary. I thought immediately I had COVID and like, I'm gonna have to go to the hospital. It felt very scary. And about 5:30 in the morning, I was like, I'm going to try taking some Benadryl because it's not something I think about or do. And within 30 minutes, the symptoms were gone. And in fact, after about 20, I felt the tightness in my chest. I felt it actually open up and release, like my lungs release. And it was like, I have to quit like playing around with this. Like I have to quit compromising. The small details of eating, you know, even products that are made with milk that I never examined or checked out, you know, whatever, having butter here and there, cheese here and there. It's like, I can't keep doing this. The details matter.
The details matter.
And that sustainable recovery is about the small details. It's no longer about the big using, you know, the big moments of using or acting out. It's about the small details. And so that's been huge for us. I kind of wanted to end in with Romans 5:3-5. More than that, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. This is what perseverance is about. This is what sustainability in our recovery is about, is that, you know, it produces the next thing until we can sustain, as long as we're, you know, staying consistent with this.
That's
so
it.
You keep fighting the good fight, you keep working the recovery process, you take care of the small details, and you can have a sustained recovery that way.
That's it. Yeah.
So
get ready to go. Just a reminder again about the summit, CR Summit Online, $49 a person. And like I talked about in the beginning, if you didn't see it, go back and check it out. But I really believe this is a game changer summit. This is a game changer.
It is. I loved Hosanna last night when she was talking about, like, this is the time to get even younger people, younger demographic that we never been able to reach, that are the techie, you know, demographic. And, you know, we just need to get the word out there to everybody we possibly can. You should be flooding your Facebooks and your Instagram pages with this, to let people know that have never heard about it, that, you know, might get interested, and like, I can spend $49 on that.
Yeah.
So
game changer for not only Celebrate Recovery in a whole, but it can be for your ministry as well too. You get as many people to bring to your own within your own CR too. There, it can be a game changer for your own ministry as well too.
Because participants, leaders, everybody is invited. It's just going to be a big old party, and so we absolutely hope to see you there, and as many people as you can get there with you.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up.
Yes.
Call it a night.
Yes.
Hope to see you guys here again tomorrow night.
Yes.
I think Roger and Sarah tomorrow night.
Yep.
I think it is.
It is. So we hope to see you guys then.
All right.
All right.
Good night, guys.
Good night.